Alright, welcome back to another episode of Psycosmos. We're going to talk today about the oil, the sacred secretion process, and in that process there is a sacred oil, the Christ seed, the Christos, the chrism, so many names for it. This is essentially, I'm going to try to maybe make this a shorter video today. Feeling a little, feeling very grateful. So today, moon is shifting into Cancer, which is my sign, so I'm feeling it today, and I'm just telling you, I'm feeling a lot less grounded. I'm feeling very, flighty, I guess you could say. I was doing a lot of my morning meditations and thinking about a lot of things today, and it's just, I have a lot of gratitude and a lot of love. So my my head's a little in the clouds right now, I guess you could say. So today we're going to talk about the return of Christ, sacred secretion, Kundalini awakening, Nadon, all that, all kind of congealed into this one idea. In my dissertation, I called it the chrism hypothesis, and trying to sound maybe a little empirical. Essentially, 13 stages on this process where the brain sends signals and some specific chemicals from the pituitary mainly down the shaft. Again, colostrum does not secrete an oil, so I understand where this is coming from. There's a lot of case studies in sciences about the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And what I've also found in my research is anything that has a CH in it, Hiram Abiff of the Freemasons, right? That story, which is very synonymous with the story of Christ. Anything with a CH in it often had to do with a rejuvenation factor or an interconnecting factor. So choline or choline, however you pronounce it. Some people pronounce it differently. CH at the beginning of it, the choroid plexus, that's another one. There's so many things with CH in it within the body, I feel like have to do with the spirit of what Christ embodies, symbolically. So I thought that was really interesting when I was doing a lot of my research. But suprachiasmatic nucleus, and again, another CH in there. And what they discovered in a lot of case studies on both humans and even animals is that different light frequencies that hit within the melanopsin of our eyes register in different ways. And this is why animals have mating seasons, for example. When there's a specific frequency, I think for most animals it's around that springtime threshold, which would probably be from Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. That kind of string, I think, is where a lot of different animals come out for mating cultures. That's a wide variety and category, but it's different for all the different animals that are out there. So this frequency comes into our eyes, gets registered by different parts of our eyes, essentially. That suprachiasmatic nucleus, or you could just call it the SCN, that SCN interacts with a lot of different things, one of which is the colostrum. The colostrum is almost kind of like a satellite in your brain. It does not secrete oils. So we have this concept, everybody's like, oh, Santa Claus coming down the chimney. Well, Santa Claus is imaginary. Sorry to spoil it for you guys, or if you're below the age of 10 watching this video. But Santa Claus is imaginary, and the colostrum has to deal with signals. However, the colostrum does take that signal and re-register it in, hypothetically speaking, into the inner thalamus of the brain. It's connected right into the thalamus. So it makes sense that, the eyeballs connect to the SCN, connect to the thalamus, connect to the inner, they connect to the colostrum, then the thalamus. So there's a laundry list of things here, right? But the colostrum itself does not secrete an oil. And the sacred oil is probably more in response of the mother gland, which would be the pituitary gland. So really it's the divinity of the mother, which makes sense because the moon is the orbiting object in which this rules over. So the pituitary matches up with the moon the same way that the pineal matches up with the sun, esoterically speaking. So wrapping our head around this then, the pituitary, which by the way, there's a couple different axes I want to point out. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. The reason is because the thyroid and the thymus are really important with this process too, as well as the spleen, as well as a lot of other organs. But basically, the light goes into the eye, gets registered in the brain. Brain will drip a little bit of oil, I guess you could call it, endocrine-related substances. And the energy of the body, really, it is through CSF movement, but that's because CSF integrated and interfastened into like all the other organs. You have the deep front line, you have all these other lines within the body where they're connected to the brain. They're part of the vagus nervous system, they're part of the celiac ganglion, like that whole structure. So there's all these different tubes that run in your body. It's all interconnected, right? And it's almost like that essence, which is of Christ anyway, but that helps you modulate energy in your body. And when you modulate the energy in your body in the right ways, and you start to, activate this divine substance and have it go up into the central column of the spine, it's almost like the body is like spreading out the wisdom of whatever the brain is secreting, and then you bring it, you bring it down. Well, it goes down anyway, and then you bring it up the central shaft. So it's like you're combining, and it's all going up the stairway to heaven, the 33 rungs of the vertebrae. 33 years of Jesus, 33 Freemason, Club 33 at Disneyland, all that stuff. So here's your 33. Matches with like the 32, roughly speaking, teeth, with the tongue being the 33rd object, because it's just an inverted spine in your mouth. Because again, it's as above, so below. So all of this, super important, right? Essentially, what this oil, this substance is a conglomeration of like lipids, exosomes, neuropeptides, lipid-based hormones specifically, and it's messages between the brain and the endocrine glands. I have my data here pulled up just with like little bullet points. So what this does is some of them are mainly cholesterol-derived neurosteroids. You guys remember they like attacked cholesterol back in the day, and also cholesterol starts with CH. It's a midpoint substance that's like all throughout your body, and you do need it, especially for your brain. There's some melatonin precursors, some stem cells involved with this process, and during periods of resting, fasting, meditation, you can actually better control CSF flow, and there's case studies on that as well. So during putting your body into specific spiritual related states helps you regulate the energy throughout the body. And when everything, it's almost like you're controlling a spiral within you, right? And that's a really cool way to like visualize it. Everything at golden ratios inward. Okay, even you, and that's why I've drawn this here. You've got like a person within a person. There's kidneys on both sides here. There's the diaphragm. The diaphragm is right. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here visually. The diaphragm runs right along exactly where the diaphragm would be if this was a person. Like, so imagine you take the heart, connect it to the spine. You have the sagittal sciatic nerves that are running here. They look like little legs. And then you have this diaphragm here in the midsection, and then I believe below the diaphragm are like the kidneys, and it almost looks like 2 arms, 2 legs, and a body with a head, with the heart being the head. And so it's like everything spirals inwards, and there's a lot of dimensions to this. This has like Kabbalah integrated into this as well. And so you look at it and you're like, okay, everything spirals inwards, and what you're doing is you're circulating the spiral. Okay, so you have the mid-center point, which is like, your core, your soul, your spirit. A lot of people call it whatever they want. But you have that mid-center of gravity where that's where a lot of the feeling and the living and the experience of being human is. You don't really feel a lot of that in the brain. You'll get headaches, sure, like all that, but your emotions are more in your body, if you've noticed that. And that's what the emotional aspect of it is really what makes us human at the end of the day. So it's like you're almost circulating the spiral all around you. While the galaxy is flowing all around you like this, you're also channeling that energy as well, using yourself as the midpoint. Really interesting concept to wrap your head around, but if you get it, then you get it. Again, this is why the whole stuff in the Middle East is called the Middle East for a reason. All the war and everything that's going on in the Middle East is in reference to this spiral energy. We exist in the Virgo supercluster. Virgo's the largest constellation. More people are born Virgos than any other sign. How is all of that possible? And it's because we exist within the center general area. Okay, if you were to have NASA has it, and there's a few other space organizations like in Japan and I think in Israel too, that have maybe it's Dubai or like the Middle East, other parts of Saudi Arabia. One of those areas they all have this model of a cylindrical looking universe, or like a toroidal shaped universe. It almost looks like a world map. It looks like a bubble, right? And at the end of the day, it's the same shape of all of life. DNA is a spiral helix. So it all spirals, and it all spirals inward, and it all spirals outward, and the spirals all ever connecting. And that's, God had to like spiral the energy in order to get everything, if you want to think of it that way. When God's like up on the top, he's spiraling down. And then we are spiraling up with our prayers. We are spiraling this energy up in response because we're on the bottom. You see, it's kind of very symbolically deep. So anyway, getting that out of the way, the science of what the oil actually is, I gotta stay on track here. So it's this concoction. I think some of it is within the CSF, of course. I make the point in the dissertation. I don't have lab equipment. I wasn't able to test the physical, scientific, observable methods for this. I have a bunch of supporting data that shows all of the interconnecting puzzle pieces. But if you're asking me, were you able to get like a bunch of scientists to come in a room and perform CAT scans and MRIs on people to see all this data? No. And I think that, like anything else in life, it's a stepping stone, and I'm just adding another stepping block so that somebody might be able to do that in the future, or somebody can work with me and we can, have observable testing, quotients and get, kind of qualitative and empirical. I keep using that word, but it's just like, if you want anything accepted, it has to be empirical. So in the scientific community. So anyway, no, I haven't put something like that together yet. I think that that's probably the next step, and I make that point in the dissertation. You always got to look at wherever the flaws are in any of your hypotheses as well. You got to be open about those. But I think that if we were to get the data, it would show exactly this. And if you guys are following me, I think it probably makes sense. So again, where does like the celibacy, right? Where does it sit? So I think it sits in the bottom of this fluid, right? This fluid's always moving. The CSF itself is always moving through your body. That's not the regulation part. That's not the part that matters. It's really not the oil. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's the light signature frequency that puts your body under a different state of duress. It puts your body under a different stage of chemical tolerance, I guess, where your body's in a different frequency in order to alchemalize the substance itself. And when it's supercharged in the right way, and essentially what that means is whenever this ideal Christ seed or oil goes into the base of the coccygeal sacrum, it's charging, that's Jesus going out into the wilderness, because the wilderness is the scary part. So if that's not the tomb, right, everybody says, oh, it comes down here for 3 days. It doesn't come down here for 3 days. I couldn't find evidence of that. What I could find evidence of is chemical concoctions sitting in the anterior thalamus. I believe it was the anterior thalamus, or the third and fourth ventricles between them. So essentially, it gets supercharged here. I don't know how long, but you could say maybe 3 days. Jesus was out in the wilderness for 40 days, I believe it was, being tempted by the shaitan. And so you could say maybe it's 4 days. Maybe they said 4 days because that's what it is. I don't know. But let's assume that it gets supercharged at some point. What matters is that it hits the brain when the moon does its thing, whether you're male or female. And remember, I think of this a little bit differently because I did a case study on it. The moon goes into the sun sign, that's for men. The moon goes into the phase of when the woman was born, that's for women. Or just go off of your ovulation. And your menstruation too should also be respected. Don't just think like, oh, well, ovulation, I can, do the sacred secretion, and then menstruation, I can do whatever I want. No, for women, you have to respect both of those aspects of the cycle. That's kind of your caveat. Whereas men, I think that there probably is an opposite cycle for men, where, maybe the sign opposite of your sun sign is kind of a different stage where you can ground. I've experimented with that. For me, it worked. If the moon goes into Capricorn, for example, I'll eat a steak. That's like where I think you can experiment with the grounding and the lower frequency stuff. Partying, so to speak. Not that I do too much of that these days, but ultimately, what this is a way to live. All right, you take 7 days roughly out of every single month, and you go light. You eat fruits and veggies. You try to avoid negative emotions. You avoid alcohol. You stay celibate. And when you do that, you harmonize. I mean, I'm doing it right now. I'm in that kind of mode right now. I have been the last couple of days as the moon went into Gemini and everything else. Also, my moon sign is Taurus. So for me, even when the moon enters Taurus, which is 2 signs before my sun sign, that is ultimately where, I start to feel it for me. But like I said, I think it's different. Everybody's got a different soul. So the energy that inhabits your body has a specific frequency. We're all different frequencies because that's what your soul really is. It's whatever frequency you're on, right? So what I'm trying to get at here is it's not just about the oil. It's not just about the secretion itself. It comes down, you supercharge it. Now, when you study the Nadon, one of the things I found really interesting, and there was another, I think, Arabic culture that talked about this too. Maybe it was like Zoroastrian. I can't remember right now. But I know specifically for Nadon and studying Tao and a lot of the Chinese alchemical stuff, they essentially look at it as it's not about the liquid itself. It's not about the seminal fluid even itself. It's you don't want to waste a single drop of it, but it's not even about the physical fluid. It's the energy that's within the fluid, and when you release the fluid, you release the energy that's within the fluid. But the same would also go for the egg, for the woman, because the woman does reabsorb parts of the egg, but I think it's more of an energy thing. The ovulation, the egg just sits there. It's got this dormancy of energy and life, like it's just waiting for that spring of life. And when it comes out and there's nothing to give it that life, I guess you could say, the spark at least that it needs to, start going and creating the life, it doesn't just like disappear. You know what I mean? Like the body reabsorbs it one way or another because you don't pass it through your, you could actually see the egg. So this is the cool part. A woman, the female ovum is the largest single cell thing in all of our bodies. Out of any other cell in the human body, the ovum is the largest by, I think, a considerable margin. And it would be a point where you could see the ovum if it were released. That's how big enough that cell is, where you can actually see it by itself. It might be really tiny, but you could see it. And so I think more women would have evidence of something like that coming out of their bodies around that time. So your body, and you could, I'm only adding that because it's important to kind of point out the whole thing. I think that the female reproductive cycle is a really beautiful thing when you study it, and it's really interesting that their body reabsorbs some of that. I don't know if it's nutritionally, there's really not a lot of evidence on it or data on it, but I know energetically women obviously are at an all-time high when it comes to hormonal and everything else. So it would go to say that the ovum gets reabsorbed, the seminal fluid gets reabsorbed into the tracts. And yes, there's all these ovulatory and testicular tracts that go from the life-giving objects, which would be the ovaries and the testicles, into the coccygeal sacrum at the base of the spine. After it sits there and you do all the things to raise it, including chanting, because here's your throat, so it's like, oh yeah, whatever kind of chants, Om Namo Narayana, that's one of them, and then the Hopa Hopa Hopa, there's all these different chants that people do all throughout all these different cultures. This is a way to kind of draw that up magnetically through vibration and sound. You bring it up into the brain, and even me speaking right now, I can kind of feel my CSF is kind of circulating within my body. And then you bring it up into the mind, and that is where there's something that happens here around the thymus, thyroid glands, where it's like the oil press, okay? So essentially it gets disseminated, it gets scattered a little bit because it has to pass the blood-brain barrier. And so in order to do that, it fragments, it gets betrayed, and it gets crucified in the skull. And then it sits in that anterior thalamus, third, fourth ventricle for, I think, the 2.3 days. That's where I think it sits. Now, why? Because the lower mind is always described as hell, and the higher mind is the heaven, and the inner thalamus is the purgatory, where the kingdoms are at balance, The inner thalamus can also be the heaven and whatever. There's all these different analogies for it, but essentially, what I do know is that maze of the lower mind is the bull, it's Taurus, it's the Minotaur. It's like the scary part, the limbic system, the amygdala. That's all within the parts that would be considered Taurus, which would be the lower mind, which Taurus also represents the earth. in a lot of ways, all throughout astrological things. Virgo and Taurus are like the signs that represent Earth more than anything. So Earth being the Taurian Earth, you know, it's at the crucible, it's at the crux, it's at the very base. That's the graveyard of the skull of Golgotha, where it sits in the tomb. And then it comes into the thalamus, which would be like the heaven, you know, above, so to speak. The balancing, you know, midpoint of all things, really. And then it comes up into that heaven space, and it illuminates the pineal gland, and it reactivates the pituitary gland. Really, it seems like it refurbishes those, and in which case those two glands create more substance for the body. Now, I think that this actually is basically happening all the time, every day, right? Which is something I think Museum of Tarot said. He's like, oh, well, CSF, you know, you flow through your body all the time. But it's not just CSF. That's the thing. Your body's in a specific alchemical chambering frequency during this time. It has to do with the green, the white, the red, and the black, like the 4 colors of alchemy. Neuromelanin would be the black, the red would probably be blood, the white would probably be the genitalia energy or the fluids or whatever. It could also be white blood cells, or like whatever the corresponding thing would be within the spleen. Like the corpuscles of the spleen produce a lot of like mucus related you know, white blood cells and immune system cells. And then there's also the yellow or the green, which I think is probably the cholesterol or some kind of oily fatty substance. And anyway, there's so much to this process. I don't want to overdo it, and I'm kind of getting a little long-winded myself with this. That's essentially a lot of the bullet-pointed baseline. I have so much more. I mean, you're talking it was over 100 pages, the dissertation. But you're talking like, I think I had close to 200 sources within it. It was like somewhere around there. And so you're talking a lot of data. This isn't just something I can make a 20-minute YouTube video on. But I do hope that you enjoyed the engaging content today. And I hope that if this interests you and you want this information to keep getting circulated, I'm going to keep making more videos. Drop a comment, please like, please share, and consider supporting me. I've got an online university, I've got an AI tool, I've got all this stuff. I won't run through it because you guys have probably heard it, but all of your support really helps. Thank you for everybody who's reached out recently. It means a lot. Look, I know like the stock market and the crypto markets and everything are crashing, and like the world seems like it's getting worse and it's more on fire every single day, no matter what we do, and everybody's anticipating some stuff. But I'm here for you guys. You know, even if I have to really focalize and make specific time for these videos out of my day, I'm trying to capitalize more on my time recently, just because, like, you know, I've shared this with you guys, being vulnerable. I've lost a lot of money doing this, but I wouldn't trade it for anything else. I love you guys and I love doing this, and I don't want to seem like I'm coming off as ungrateful. It's just I've noticed that people will watch it for free and then they don't do anything with it. And at the very least, if we're going to consume it for free, which I'm fine with, at least blow it up. You know, don't have these other guys that are talking about silly stuff. You know, don't blow up their videos. Blow up this one. You know, blow up one of my other videos. Try to get this information out there, because I think it's really important. I think that this is, like I mentioned, this is a big part of spirituality moving forward. That has nothing to do with me. It's just the way that it's going to evolve anyway. I'm trying to give everybody the cheat codes to life right now. That's the way I feel. That's just my paradigm. That's where I'm coming from. So I love being able to share this wisdom. I think it's the greatest thing in the world. I think it's the coolest thing in the world. I embody it. I try to embody it every single day. Some days are harder than others. You know, it's not about being perfect though. Stop trusting the anonymity of these gurus that are out there. I can promise you that a lot of the people who you're seeing who make content like this, on the back end, they have problems just like anybody else. And so do I. You know, like I said, I've lost a lot of money doing this. That's probably my biggest leg up right now, as I'm trying to recover from. Because, you know, I would have really liked to have moved on with my life at a certain point. And, you know, start settling down or something. But like this work has just, it's really just been my real baby, you know. So I really want this to get out there. I want this to get the respect and at least be seen. And hey, if it turns out that all this stuff is just some crazy schizophrenic cuckoo nonsense, then I'll accept it. I'll eat crow on it. I'm fine with that. But the reality is it makes too much goddamn sense compared to what all the wealthy elites are doing right now with our time and our money. So if you want to put your faith in me, I think I won't let you down. I'm just going to keep working at it, and I'll never stop doing this. I think I'm locked in doing this for life. to be honest with you. But that doesn't mean that sometimes I got to prioritize and step away or whatever the case might be. So any support helps. I appreciate it. I've got a lot of the science of this detailed out on my online school. All right. There's a 7-day free trial, $30 a month, $29 a month. All right. You can't beat that price. You could come in for a month and quit. I don't care. But the support helps. Actually, you can't really do that because it's you got to go through like a tier system. And I set it up that way so that people couldn't just like join in and steal my stuff, because that's definitely happened before. And people are trying to capitalize off of a lot of my theories and whatnot. But I've got trademarks, so I don't know what to tell you. I should probably put my logo up in the corner or something of this. But anyway, I love you guys. Please take care of yourselves. I'm cheering every single one of you guys on. I love you guys. And if you need anything, feel free to reach out. I've got the services. We do astrology readings here if you're interested in that from a psychological perspective. Yeah, really great stuff, and I just wouldn't trade for anything. So I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.